Welcome to Hats Off to Aging. I'm your host, Ian Parkinson, and I have with me today Larry from the Unison at the Viner Centre. Welcome, Larry.
Thanks for having me back.
So we're now in the doldrums of summer, for a better word. It's pretty hot out there. What are we looking at, and what can we expect? What is the Viner Centre focusing on for August-ish?
Well, the big focus for us in August is caregivers. You could almost say caring for caregivers, more so in August.
Now, caring for caregivers is you're caring for somebody who's caring for somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, technically, or I suppose not technically, anybody who's a parent is a caregiver and so on. But in our minds, we look at how does caregiving affect older adults? And so kind of our definition of caregivers, about 500,000 Albertans would fall into this description. And it can be kind of a variety of situations. So it could be as a senior, you are parenting your grandchildren, or maybe acting as the caregiver or guardian for those grandchildren. And that creates additional stresses on a family unit. But also maybe your spouse is having declining physical health or cognitive decline. And so as a spouse, you become a caregiver to your partner. And the final thing we see a number of years back, both the centers in Calgary and Medicine Hat, we changed our definition of a senior or older adult from the federal government's 65 plus. Right. And we started including people who were 50 or 55. Because one of the things we found is a lot of older adults who are in their 50s are caring or are a caregiver for their aging parents. Right. And so that provides an additional challenge in life, and we think that we need to support people who are taking those roles on.
Well, actually, I was a little surprised when you said it, but now it does actually make sense, because the norm is a middle-aged adult caring for senior parents.
Yeah.
But then you're right, because it occurs to me that there are a lot of grandparents, either on a part-time or even a regular basis, are caring for their grandchildren, and in some cases, maybe even their adult children.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not a role we normally look at growing into. Yeah. And I mean, it's young seniors with grandchildren, I mean, the energy alone, let alone the various other issues they're up against. So how are you helping support caregivers who are across three different spectrums, really?
Yeah. Well, and we because caregiving can take a number of different forms, as you've kind of pointed out, we actually work with a couple of different partners to do that. So, for example, mentioning grandparents who are parenting or caregiving for their grandchildren, we work with Bridges, for example. And so they help us. They do a grandparent support group for grandparents who are in that position. But we also, may have a situation where a spouse is supporting their partner who is undergoing cognitive decline. So we work with organizations like Alzheimer's Society or the Parkinson's Association, who provide specialized support groups for those individuals.
It does make sense to me that Unison at the Viner Centre or the Kirby Centre, now that you talk about it, it does make sense that you are actually accessing other organizations with a specific skill set you don't have. Yeah. So rather than reinventing the wheel, bring it. It's almost like an umbrella organization.
Yeah, like today, in the month of August, we're running 6 different support groups out of the Viner Center.
Okay.
And the majority of those are actually run by somebody else who has a specialization that our staff may or may not be experts in. And so, like you say, why reinvent the wheel? There's organizations in our community that this is their expertise. Let's partner with them to make sure that collectively we can create this support.
I wonder, do you have the space to do it?
Well, if somebody was offering to build another floor on Viner Center, you would get no argument from me. But yeah, space is always a premium. And again, we're trying to use more of the available time.
Right.
So we're doing more evenings and more weekend type activities, so we can kind of get these things in and do all the usual things we've been doing for years.
Yeah. Unison is a very, what's the term they use these days? Seems to be a very nimble organization. You've come up with a lot of new programs or new opportunities that are quite imaginative. And I mean, the groups you work with, I mean, you've got a list here, and I've never heard of them. First Link Connections.
Yeah.
Who are they?
Well, and again, it's kind of a specialized area of expertise. And so in our center, for example, most of our staff, depending on what their particular role is, may have a lot of expertise or understanding of something like dementia, for example. But if you are a 50-year-old, 55-year-old, and your parents have just been diagnosed with dementia, and you are on that you're on that learning curve. Well, what the heck does this mean? And what does this mean for my dad? And so in our community, we do have groups that specialize in particular forms of dementia. And so they partner with us to create a almost like an introductory support group for people who have become a caregiver or are becoming a caregiver for somebody just entering into dementia. And so, again, it's some of our staff may have a basic understanding of dementia just because what their job is. But again, when it comes to, the experts in the space in our community, that's who we want to work with.
Well, and that actually does make a lot of sense, because I guess the Viner Center and the Kirby Center, your staff are like gatekeepers almost, where, I have a pretty good idea. I think I know the answer to your question. However, I'm not an expert at it, but let me give you the contact information for this. I'll have them contact you, and then they can answer your questions and provide you the support from there.
Yeah.
It's almost like a clearinghouse, really. Because, I mean, you have a lot of programs.
We do, and I guess in the community, anyone who is 50, and older, there's a lot of diversity of race, religion, income, all sorts of things, and so that's a lot of people to serve in this community, and finding kind of. I guess our staff do a lot of work in terms of what do these people need, and we rely on a lot of kind of things like an advisory committee or feedback surveys or whatever. And when you find an area that is a need area or something people really want to do, like our trips and stuff like that, then you go out and you figure out, in our community, who's the expert in this area, and can we partner with them? And if there's not an expert, we'll figure out how do we get the expertise or develop it ourselves. But if there's already somebody in the community, it's much more effective for us to work together.
Well, and I would imagine too, I mean, your membership at both centers, 50 and older, I mean, that's a massive infrastructure knowledge base. They come from all walks and careers and professions and pastimes.
For sure.
So, and those of us who are at the mature level have a tendency to be more than happy to share that experience and that skill set.
For sure.
Well,
and I think that's actually another good point that you bring up is by working that way with kind of the expertise in the community, you also tend to harness, I suppose, the volunteer support that you can get, and we have paid staff who work in the center and they work full time, but the volunteers really expand our reach much farther than we could afford to have paid staff to do. For sure.
I mean, I've always had a soft spot for the Meals on Wheels volunteers. I mean, they're out there in some pretty horrendous weather sometimes, making sure everybody gets a hot meal. But then their skill set also expands where they're watching the community as well as the individuals they deliver to. They're driving along through the neighborhood, almost like a neighborhood watch, really.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a bit of a safety net or a wellness net for our community, because those volunteers, they deliver a meal, and from a nutritional standpoint or a health standpoint, that's a really beneficial service. But the additional, the connection, the check-ins that they provide our users make that service kind of vastly more beneficial.
I mean, your volunteer drivers for medical appointments, I mean, there's a big one too. Besides alleviating to a degree the isolation, the drivers enters into a relationship with the passenger, and it's not just, here you go, I'll be back in half an hour. They develop a friendship, and the passenger asks a question and the volunteer driver says, well, I don't have the answer to that, but I know who to talk to. I'll get back to you. So it's, we're back to being a community, I think.
Yeah, I mean, again, capturing that, the social, it's not Uber for sure. It's way more than Uber. It's community, it's social. Our volunteer drivers for Viner Vintage, they don't get into it because, Uber didn't accept them or something. They get into it because of the connection that they get out of the relationship, for sure.
Well, and the thing too is, I mean, we were talking before the show started about we've got so used to technology that, I mean, everybody knows what Uber or Ride Free and all of these, but you need a smartphone. Quite a few seniors have smartphones, but I get the distinct impression that it's more a question of being able to call the kids or call a cab or call the doctor's office or whatever. They're not necessarily prepared to put their credit card number into this handheld Giggle box and call a ride. And sometimes I've noticed that sometimes I have to stop and say, yes, I know how to make this work, but my 85-year-old father has absolute suspicion around this thing. He's used to picking up the handset.
Right. Yeah, and I think we experience that as well, where people, our users of the service will request a specific driver because there's that trust factor, there's that relationship, and that is one of the big benefits of the program, for sure.
Well, I mean, we've seen it because, I mean, again, Viner and Kirby Center has these anti-scam presentations. So, seniors are more easily taken in, I think, which again leads to why they're very suspicious around new technology.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think, I mean, again, in the programs we run for scams, and again, that's another area where we rely on some outside expertise and kind of a variety of either law enforcement or better business or whatever. But yeah, there is a vulnerability there that I think a lot of the people that we work with are aware that there are people that will take advantage of them, and so it is nice to have something like a Viner Vintage where okay, I can trust these people, or they've been vetted, and all those types of things, for sure.
And I would imagine that's probably how I guess your programs are promoted, because if a senior goes to the Viner Center for an anti-scam presentation, and then suddenly they realize that you have a restaurant and a coffee bar, and well, if you're a member, you can play pool or billiards or darts or these other pastimes. And oh, by the way, we have these social services opportunities. And then they talk to their friends when they go home. And then it just grows from there.
It's kind of like the community development or social service, equivalent to, repeat customers, right? And we do want to, if someone becomes aware of Viner Vintage, one of the priorities is medical or dental or legal appointments. But we also will bring people to Viner Center, because we also know, well, if you realize there's a cafe, it's like, oh, I might go for lunch or coffee. And then you discover other programs we operate. And we know that if we connect you because you have a need to get to your physician, but then you also find out, well, I can actually use this service to take me to the Viner Center as well, to participate in this other thing. All those things collectively reduce isolation and create that benefit for seniors.
Isolation, I think, is a big issue with seniors. It kind of makes sense. I understand it that as we age, we lose our friends and compatriots and peers, and you get set in your own little routine, and before you know it, a week's gone by and nobody's called and nobody's rung the doorbell. And that can be a debilitating effect on anybody, let alone a senior.
For sure. I mean, you get to a certain age and you are at that age where, like you say, you may be losing your social network, but you're also at a point where it's hardest to develop, and you don't necessarily say, hey, I got to go out and make some new friends. But reducing isolation, I mean, there's even recent research that shows that extreme loneliness and extreme isolation has very strong negative health consequences.
We are very much herd animals. That tribal, I think, is the proper term.
For sure. And again, I mean, even to, the average person who, well, why do you care whether somebody comes out and makes new friends? And the reality for all of us is, reducing isolation reduces healthcare costs, which reduces taxes and all those things. So even though, that is a much more transactional way of looking at it, there's a benefit to people beyond, people who might be members at the center, for sure.
Right. You mentioned that you provide some level of legal services. What do they look like?
Well, in our membership in Alberta, period, one of the things that if we run a group on how to plan your will or your estate, or personal directives or those type of things, we'll have a lot of people sign up. And so whether we do that in person in the Viner Center or if we do that on Zoom, they're some of the most popular things we do. And a lot of the financial experts and the lawyers that we may work with or who work in this space, it's really good for their business to be able to connect with people who want that information. And so it becomes like a three-way win-win-win for us to partner with lawyers to do presentations on Zoom or in person, again, it's good for us, it's good for our members and our users, but it's good for the people who provide the service in the community. So it's an area that we are actually diversifying, partly because technology and Zoom and YouTube and all those things really help us expand our reach in that area. But again, it's the thing that not only do our members tell us how much they like it, but the professionals that we work with say, hey, we love doing this stuff because, you put us in front of 70 seniors who are really interested in learning about this. So,
well, I would imagine it's a very, the word escapes, it's a very low-key way of a senior getting it the information they need to know which questions to ask in a very safe space.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We've got a lawyer. He's going to talk about estate planning. Just show up at 7:00 and ask your questions. They do a presentation, so you go in there and then take it from there. Because I think for me, as I reach in this age, that whole the estate planning, the personal directives, the wills, I think there's 2 other legal health-wise documents. It just makes it so much easier for the person who gets to clean up behind you, usually an elderly, an older, mature child.
Yeah.
But then they don't have to start saying, well, what did Dad want done with this? It's all been laid out, and it's just easier. And if there are various, valuable items that need to go to a specific person, it gives the senior that peace of mind that that's all taken care of. It's all laid out. And I've read my will, and it's like, oh, I'm glad you're a lawyer because I think I got half of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think this tends to be one of the most uncomfortable areas for family members to talk about. But if some planning doesn't go into it, nobody who comes to one of our wills and estates presentations, has the idea that, well, I want this to be really difficult for my children when I'm gone. They want it to be seamless and, least likely to create conflict or family problems.
Well, and there are, for some, there are even tax issues that can be, for a better word, alleviated prior to the funeral, whereas afterwards it's like, you're going to have to pay estate taxes or whatever, whereas if something was divvied up beforehand, there's a lot less aggravation.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you offer funeral planning?
We don't offer it ourselves, but we have started working with, for example, we work with the Memorial Society that, the organization, part of their mandate is helping people with reduced cost funerals and planning. And so we are working with professionals kind of in that space to create almost like a library of content. They'll do presentations at one of our centers. We'll record them, put them on YouTube. So it's kind of evergreen content. So we are starting to kind of work a little more in that space to find partners who have more and more expertise in those areas.
Yeah, because again, that the senior involved can answer all of the questions before the kids have to decide, well, is it a burial, is it a cremation, is it a whatever? Yeah. And then go from there. Yeah, we're back to peace of mind again, I think, for the children and the grandchildren.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when you think, at the time where I pass, I don't want my children to feel like they have to shop around for these services because they don't understand them. And so the more understanding that they have ahead of time, the better.
Yeah, it's because losing especially losing a parent, is traumatic enough without then having to somehow either make a decision or come to a consensus with the other children and the family. And Yeah, I bring it up because I went through the same thing twice with my parents. It was like, oh, well, we kind of discussed it 20 years ago, but we never really. Because then the other one that kind of comes up a lot is as now the boomer generation, I think the last one retire next year, the leading wave of the boomers who retired about 15, 20 years ago, they're now in that process where they're maybe have no choice but to look at moving out of their family home into some kind of facility.
Yeah.
And I've never really come across anybody who's been able to articulate the options.
Sure. Yeah.
Besides, yes, you're only 70, yes, you're healthy, but, you need to look at this, discuss it with your spouse and siblings and children, and then say, okay, what are my options? Where can we go? And go from there. Just a hint.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's, when you're caregiving for a parent who is experiencing dementia, I just can think of a situation where one adult child was saying, well, Dad owns his house. We'll just sell his house, and then he'll have money for us to put him in this nice place with his dementia ward. And it's like, well, wait a second. Do you have a personal directive, or who has power of attorney? And when you get the deer in the headlights look of, oh, we don't have any of that. It's like, well, you can't just sell your father's house because that's his house, and you have no legal authority to do that. So some of those things, when you've thought them through and you have personal directives and you've answered all those questions, makes life way easier for the family and adult children when you come to those situations.
Yeah, it's much easier to enter this world than it is to exit it.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah.
How about the trips? Anything new?
Yeah, well, and again, this is kind of an area, our day trips have been exceedingly popular, and I've mentioned to you before, we have a great group of volunteers who helps us plan them. We are continuing now to look at longer trips where, and again, a lot of the trips where we might work with an external party on a cruise, on a trip to, Mexico or whatever. Again, most of the travel, you might travel out of the Calgary airport. And so if there's work that we're doing for a group here or Calgary, it's kind of easy to do both at once. And so we're looking at some trips to Europe. And again, that's, you have to have kind of enough people want to go at the same time. But yeah, we're continuing that seems to be a very popular area for us to develop more.
So we might see a Thomas Cook's at Unison Center?
Who knows what you'll see. But again, it's that relying on good partners outside with good expertise, has been good for us for sure.
Excellent. Thank you for coming in, Larry.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you for watching Hats Off to Aging.